It is. I can't wait. I've never seen one, but my mom has seen Craft 3 times. She had one hover over her car.
There's aliens among us.
Oh, yeah.
When my mom met one, she had bones. She shook hands. And it was, but you knew. Some people know when you meet a witch, there are good witches and bad witches, you feel that energy. When she met this, the energy was totally different. And she, but I think they can let you see that or not let you, what
Like
you were
we
talking
said,
about.
yeah.
Yes.
What's really cool about extraterrestrials is that they come from different star systems and they have their own astrology. They have exoastrology based on different configurations. And it's possible that our sun is a major point in one of their constellations, and that what they get from that constellation includes our spiritual energy being represented in some interesting way. So they may have had a tug toward coming here because they look at our star far, far away through their own, you know, maybe they have telescopes that can see all the way here. And they think it's a really cool thing.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think the human race is more interesting than we think, than we realize. That we are quite a spectacular species in the universe. We may not be the most evolved, we can't do what they can do, but it's kind of like if you look at a butterfly, you know, we're more evolved than them, but damn, they can do all this, they can fly. Wow, good for them. That's how they look at us.
I just seen things, but when I was 15, my sister and I saw a huge mothership right over our house. I mean, it was just like, you know, you take your breath, it was like red and green lights circling. We didn't hear a thing, and we ran in to get our parents, but we came out, it was gone, but all the dogs in the neighborhood were just barking like crazy. If I told that to people, we didn't tell a lot of people, they think you're crazy. But that was 55 years ago.
That sounds like what my mom saw. She mentioned red and green light. She said it also smelled like sulfur, really strong.
I don't remember that part, but I do remember it was something that out of a fairy tale. It was, you know, it just didn't seem real,
Yeah.
but it was real. We both remember that.
Oh, you're so lucky.
And it made me, it's kind of funny because I never was afraid of that idea of UFOs. They don't terrify me.
Right.
It's kind of, I don't know, my parents were, it's kind of funny, my parents were real, I would say they were conservative, not politically.
Yeah, just traditional.
But my mother had mental problems. But they were really excited about UFOs. I guess maybe they thought it would help change their life or something. I don't
I think that's what we're all hoping for
Yeah.
at some level.
There's a famous song on praying to the aliens.
Really?
Praying to the aliens. Because who else can dig us out? There's actually been some ideas back in the 50s and even the 60s. UFOs would show up around military, around nuclear silos, launching silos in different places, and they could actually shut or deactivate some of the controls because they didn't want there to be any more nuclear war on Earth. I guess when you detonate a nuclear bomb, all of the all the physics of it does something into other dimensions and other places that it disrupts them. It rocks their boat, and they don't want that. And they if anybody can stop, they can prevent Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump from nuking it out nuclearly, it's them. Let's hope that they do find it. Every time you see it, next time you see that mothership, you flag them down and say, get down here, help us, look what we're doing.
He said it disrupts the time continuum. And that's why they are so against
That makes
any
sense.
nuclear, why they stopped, they continue to stop. They said we won't have any more nuclear.
Yeah.
Even though we get told we will all the time, we won't, because they will not allow it to happen. It affects the whole complete time continuum.
Yeah. Thou shalt not disrupt the time continuum. It's in the Alien Bible. Remember that. Yes.
Will Missouri Governor Greitens resign?
Maybe if someone else came forward.
There's a thinking about it. I don't know if it's gonna happen.
On news, he said it was not going to.
I'm almost sure that that's not an isolated incident. I think that if more people get emboldened, want to do, and just not to put, I don't know what's going to happen. But there's a lot of possibility of hush money going out. Who's to say? Everyone's got skeletons in their closet. I think he's been able to keep a lid on them for the most part.
So it hinges on whether or not others will come.
I think so. I think the existing case may be a little bit weak when it comes to actually removing a sitting governor. I don't see that having enough oomph to it.
Steve,
Yes.
you mentioned something about earthquakes,
I did.
severe changes. Could you amplify on that just a bit more, please?
Well,
At least for this area.
Yeah, okay, I think that for locally, we do get fracking, secondary to fracking, we get these seismic waves that come through. The bigger possibility of that, what's that big fault line in I forgot the name of it, the one that, the New Madrid. The New Madrid one. Yeah. That might, I think all of the cumulative effect of all of these things is that it will destabilize the New Madrid one, and that could rupture again. That fault line could rupture sometime in the next 27 years, and it's just a matter of if this fracking doesn't go away, it could create all kinds of mischief for these other fault lines. So that's why. As far as the other ones around the world, yeah, I think Greece and Turkey are always having interesting. I think Greece is kind of ready for another one. I think as Elliot said about the volcano, that produces that can also trigger earthquakes. I think on this side of the Atlantic, the eastern seaboard in New England will have something there in like the 5.0 range. And that's enough to do some damage. And I think they're going to get something, I'm not sure exactly when, but I would think toward the middle of July. West Coast, I do see off Oregon that, what's it called, the Cascade? Yeah, that one, every 200 or so years, that one completely obliterates lots of territory out there. I think that is overdue for something, but I think we're spared in 2018. I was thinking it could go off this year, but I don't think so.
What's the name of that one?
Is Cascadia
Says-
fault line?
Yeah, the subluxation.
It's done a lot of damage historically, usually in cycles, in 200-year cycles,
Yeah.
and it's overdue.
Alan, would you care to expand on your comments about earth changes over the year?
There are going to be some unusual weather changes, weather pattern changes. And it reminded me like when, I don't know if you guys remember, but like when India's roads were getting so hot, they were melting. You know, I saw things like that were just very unusual, things we don't normally see making headlines just because our Earth is just changing and shifting. And, you know, some people say it's global warming, some people say, well, we're in between ice ages, so, you know, we're heading into another ice age. But whatever it is, there's things showing up, there are things happening for our weather. I think for me, even like the storms we have in the spring get more and more severe every year. I just see an increase in energy that's behind that, you know, more severe weather, more superstorms, more hurricanes that are on a large scale that can do more damage. It's like an amping up of all of that type of weather. So definitely more severe weather, but just unusual weather events also.
I know we've had such mild winters the last few years. I was curious about that. Either of you have any comments?
I think it's going to continue to just get warmer where we are anyway every year. I think we're going to see less and less snow here.
Yeah.
Somebody said that the oceans are dying, or the coral reefs are dying. Do you see any fix for that? Or why?
I don't. I think it's just, I think with pollution and some other things that are happening, it's just going to keep being on the decline. The earth can adjust itself, I believe. I believe it has its own spirit and it can correct itself and it can acclimate and adapt like we can in a lot of ways. I think human beings are becoming more adaptive to our environment. I think the earth can also do that. I think it takes more time, and I hope that things wouldn't destroy it before it would have a chance to adjust, if that makes sense. I know that sounds a little strange. But because I mean, there's wildlife, there's more species that are going to become more extinct. There's just a dying off, but I also think that there could be a rebirth, a renewal, new plant forms, new types of animals, things, changing and adapting. That could take a long time, obviously, but yes, I do see things being more on the decline and more of things shifting and changing.
Again, to your point about the oceans dying, there are dead zones where the oxygen in the water, dissolved oxygen, is been depleted. It's not, because of the proliferation of certain pollutions and algae and stuff that are consuming all the oxygen. It's not being replenished, I know that. And that could be a problem. And also with global warming, the rise, the melting of the polar ice caps, Antarctica breaking off more and more, having more and more large glaciers every time. It was actually warmer in Antarctica this past week than it was in Kansas City, honestly. What's interesting is that the more that happens, the more sea level rises, and also the more those greenhouse gases that are trapped in the permafrost that are now melting get released. That'll just accelerate and exacerbate the problem. So this is what's going to, it's very inconvenient. A lot of people who don't believe in this stuff are, what can you say about it? Just they don't get it. But yeah, the sea levels are going to rise substantially over the next 50
We
years.
went to a seminar on that subject, and the gentleman said that the reason the seas are dying is because of the lack of food, mineralized food, for the sea life. And the sea life is just like people. And we don't have any minerals in our soil, so we don't have any minerals in the food. I don't care if you ever broccoli out of every organic place, you don't have the minerals that you need. And there's over 900 dams, and they dam up all of the rivers. And the minerals can't go wash out of the soils down the river and into the ocean to feed the tiny little things that feed all the big things. And it's just, it has nothing, we're not going to discuss global warming, it's just a matter of all of these. And they've gone around to all the countries, and he actually was going from speaking to us to going to talking to the United Nations. That you can see where this, if it's not being fed and they don't have any minerals either, then they die and they become sickly, like our population. Kind of interesting. I had not heard that.
And maybe that's why the earth is doing the changes, so it
Yes.
can adjust itself.
I-
We're not
yeah.
helping.
No. Unfortunately, no.
There'll also be aliens doing that too. So. Now, what's the one question you've never asked a psychic in your life that you really want to know the answer to, but you're just afraid to ask? I challenge anyone here to ask that one question.
We don't know lottery number. Well, he might. I don't know lottery numbers.
I don't know, I always write a list of questions when I go to a psychic, so I've asked a lot of questions.
Well, I do feel that, that what Ali said about the next generation of psychic, the children who are now, I think it's good that people are now mentoring them and giving them a chance to develop that and not get cut off from their belief in it, as many people are. I was a psychic kid, and I had a lot of dreams that came true, and a little bit of telepathy and precognitive recognition. But it wasn't really supported and fostered in my family. It just wasn't something that people talked about. And I was raised in a Catholic family, went to Catholic school, and of course you can't talk about that stuff in that environment. But I think it's a beautiful thing that kids are now getting exposed to it. And I think that one of the skills that will emerge from this is something I champion, which is telekinesis, levitate, or the power of the mind to send a force out and either lift things or move things or whatever, and it works at distances. And eventually, I can see a whole generation of people who've been trained specifically for telekinetic abilities so that they can help deflect incoming planet-killing asteroids like what happened to the dinosaurs. And if there were that was like a 6-mile wide asteroid or whatever, and we don't really have the means to deflect that right now, using science and all that, and there's just or even to detect it in time. But remote viewers and people who have the power to see things and influence things at a distance, they could be the saviors of the planet. And it won't come from, it's going to come from the next generation, people who have that open access to their own higher abilities that have been shut down by all of the dogma and all of the scientism that kind of tries to shut this down as well.
That's why all the TV shows about the superheroes and all of that.
Yeah. And that's something to strive for. I think we all have that ability, but most of it's been just kind of
Repressed.
yeah. Or,
What do you, based on your experience of growing up as children, and you see more children nowadays with that ability, what do you feel like is the impact of that on society?
I think it'll have a major impact on society if these children are learn to accept what's there and be comfortable with it and be open with it and let it grow, let it be nurtured. I mean, you're looking at a whole generation of very sensitive, empathic, sympathetic, open-minded kids who will want to help the planet and help society and heal it. So that's a huge deal. It's like when you hear about kids that learn meditation instead of being put in detention. It's kind of that thing. If you shift their mind to a more positive way of thinking, that will absolutely have an impact on energy and how they influence people, how we live our lives.
Are you saying that some kids in detention are being taught?
There are a couple of schools that are experimenting with that, and the children did a lot better because they learned how to meditate, kind of how to control their feelings and where those feelings were coming from, and it was a successful program. I don't have the actual details on it, but I'm sure it can be researched on Google on which schools have been doing that. But my older sister and her husband are both teachers, and they're all for that. They think that's a great idea.
Is your sister psychic too?
I have two sisters, and I have an older sister and a half sister who's younger, and they both have their own abilities. People kind of, I noticed, have like primary and secondary abilities. Theirs are a little bit different than mine. And my younger sister is a skeptic, which is interesting. So she's had things happen. She sensed things and kind of didn't know what to do with that. It freaked her out. And so I had to tell her, well, this is this way. And I'm like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. But it's like psychic ability ties right into people's belief systems. So if you're a skeptic, but you're psychic, what do you do with that? Because you have to, well, where does this come from? How did this come about? And sometimes it's genetic, and in our family it happens to be genetic. I got a lot of it, but I was also nurtured growing up. My parents didn't discourage it at all. And I joke and I say I've been scaring my parents since 1974, and I have, because I've seen things and have expressed things, and they never said don't do that or don't say that. They just said, oh, okay, and that was it. And so I researched and I learned on my own. Everything I know, I've learned on my own through experience or research. So my goal is to help kids, understand that they have someone to ask questions, someone to talk to about this, who knows about it, who's experienced it. So that was a long answer. I kind of branched off, but.
We kind of had a bumper crop of psychic kids with the Indigo generation. Are you in Indigo?
I must be, because I was in
Yeah.
74.
And then they had the Crystal generation, which is like, I don't know, another.
90s or something.
Yeah.
Well, crystals were supposed to be more spiritual minded.
Yeah.
The indigo children are powerful, so they could protect the crystals, because they're more sensitive, so they work together.
But the problem is they're all scattered, and what we need is some way of uniting them, and so they can work in unison and create communities of these kind of spectacular superpower mutants. Use their magic to do something that no one else can do.
There's a whole generation of many children with these abilities. The truth can no longer be hidden.
Yes.
So it does change paradigms and
Yes.
thought process. And it's significant.
Yes. Changing paradigms. I love that. That's perfect. That's exactly what that is. With positive outcomes.
But they medicate so many of them, and there's all the ADD, the ADHD,
Right.
all of this.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because people are starting to look into now the psychology of this. And is this schizophrenia, or is my child hearing spirits?
Mhm.
So there's a whole nother science behind it where you really have to look at it.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know
So I think that in a way science has to kind of be forced to look at that. You might want
to move your bag.
There you go.
Thank you.
Whoa, and your
yeah.
foot. So that's.
Oh, it seems to be going towards you.
predicted a flood, didn't I?
You did, and it's headed this way.
I didn't know it would come so fast. Oh, there's a UFO up there.
In my dealings with the paranormal, it's like, that's the first thing people ask. They say, am I crazy? And so, yeah, I mean, there needs to be some kind of science to kind of deal with that. Is my child depressed? Does my child have a negative attachment? I mean,
Quite a bit.
I guess you would have to look at other symptoms to see what else they would be exhibiting, how long they've had it, if there's family history, how old are they. Schizophrenia shows up usually about age 17. There's usually family history of the parents having it. So, I mean, there's things that you have to do to kind of differentiate. So, it's going to be a tricky thing.
Well, I know my granddaughter, she's 16 now, Lola, but they had her on all kinds of medications. They told her she'd never be able to read or write or anything. I told them years ago, I said, you just need to get her off of the medications. And after that, she's done so well and actually excelled. There were a teacher who said, I've never seen anyone who writes and expresses themselves so well.
Right.
And, so it's exciting, but if they had kept with the program, I don't think she would have ever gotten there.
Right.
And of course, fortunately, she's into all of this stuff. She has her tarot cards and her stones. She wants to know.
Yeah. There's like this searching that you have
Yes.
a strong desire to seek knowledge in it.
It's the only thing that's satisfying.
And I was the same way.
Yeah.
Now, being a sensitive child, you absorb everybody else's feelings and emotions, and boundaries are a huge issue with that.
Yeah.
And the kids don't know how to create boundaries or how to protect themselves, so they're absorbing all this other stuff from all these other people.
Yeah.
I remember in school, like, if there was a kid getting yelled at by a teacher, I always thought I was the one getting yelled at. I would feel terrible, like horrible, like I would start crying. But that wasn't my thing. So over the years, I had to learn that's not my thing. You know, but when you're sensitive, you think everything is your thing.
And the asking of the questions of, remember when I used to be big?
Yes,
Yeah.
reincarnation.
Right.
That's a whole other thing.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's all connected. It's hard not to talk about one
Yes.
without the other.
Yes.
Actually, I was gonna ask a question, but Charlie, did you have a question?
Yeah, what age you start rendering a child for gifts? Because I've had a grandson, he's 27 this year. And he told his mother that he saw her before he was born. And he had this connection already. So they don't believe in it totally. But, I do, and my wife does. But we're the ones who step on their toes, so to speak.
Yeah.
How to go about doing it without alienating them.
They can exhibit signs of spiritual ability as soon as they're able to talk or color. A lot of times children, like animals, will see things in the corner and just stare at it because they can see in different light frequencies than we can. So it can show up very, very early. And I've heard on so many accounts of kids saying to their parents, I chose you. I saw you. I chose you before I came here. That's very, very common. And so I guess the reaction, it shouldn't be like a reaction of being scared or anything like that. It should be, well, thank you. I'm glad you chose me. You know, something more positive, I guess, in that way. Because even though someone may not believe that, it's like you're looking at a child that doesn't know anything about reincarnation to say something like that. They didn't hear that from somewhere else.
Yes.
Go ahead, Julie.
I feel like I'm way off base here, everybody. I just want to ask one political question from you guys, and that is, do you see Trump within the next 2 years of his administration? Will he be there?
I don't.
I think the investigations that are ongoing are going to topple him eventually in such a way that he may push back and try to shut it down using all kinds of semi-dictatorial authorities that he will try to, but that too, there's enough checks and balances, I would hope, that would prevent that. But I think the money problem is going to catch up to him. The money laundering.
Would it be the kind of thing where the vice president would take the presidency?
No, I think he's dirty too.
They
Well, he certainly
Yeah.
is. Or to be like Ford, who was chosen from among the Senate. You know, people trusted and liked Gerald Ford. And so the senators chose him to step into the rest of Nixon's.
Oh, there might be like a conservative Republican chosen, somebody that kind of everybody agrees with. Because, I mean, we've never been through this really before, so I think that may be the route that they go to fulfill the rest of that term until the next elections. I don't know if that's what you see.
I have a question.
I just see that every time they get close to him, he creates another problem, another big distraction. And
I'm sorry, would you say that?
every time Well, when the investigation starts knocking on his door and getting closer and closer to him, he's going to create these massive distractions,
Yeah.
threatening war here or there, and setting off troops to fight and to do something somewhere. That's what he's got. He's got an arsenal of distractions. And fact of the matter is that he's a con man who conned his way into the presidency. And he hasn't paid his contractors. He got people to invest in Trump University. All of these things that just, come on. I mean, how crazy do you have to be to not see this? But I think the public is gradually catching up, and the elections in November are going to be the first step in redressing this.
You mean 18, November?
Yes.
This year, yeah, the
Yeah.
midterm elections, you're going to see quite a bit of people coming out of the woodwork to vote and get their voices heard. And there'll be a lot of attempts to suppress that. Right now, they're going to do everything in their power to prevent that. But
But do you see Mueller being able to complete his investigation?
yeah, Mueller's very well respected. There's a lot of people, and he's a Republican too, and he was a distinguished veteran, a Vietnam veteran, and Marines. And a lot of people love him, and the FBI people love him, and he's going to have a lot of people who will be very upset if he gets canned. That won't go over at all. So.
So do you see that Trump is, I heard you say there's money laundering going on, and
Yeah,
as
quite a
much
bit.
as I've heard.
Kazakhstan, you'll hear of Kazakhstan in the news.
Okay, so I've not heard that. So here's my question. So we're saying that Trump is worse than Obama was ever, or that Clinton was ever, or that, so we're putting Trump up there at the top with all of what we've watched go on in the last 8 to 10, 12 years.
I'm speechless with that question. I know that Trump is a bigot, he's racist, he has a very little respect for women, he's potentially implicated in 18 cases of sexual abuse. His character deficiencies are outrageous. So I think we're talking about a very exceptional type of person in Trump. And he had a lot of people who elected him because they just wanted to throw like a Molotov cocktail at the system to just kind of change the whole game. Maybe they were disgruntled by Obama and Clinton, and they had their, probably had well-founded reasons in many cases, but this is just something where this guy came in, and he's finding a way to, he's found a way to fool a lot of people.
So what do you see with the pedophilia rings and all of that that's been
With
coming
where?
out? The pedophilia rings and all of that that's coming out?
Can you say one? Is there
Can I
one legitimate
state
case you
one?
know about? Is there one
Harvey
legitimate case?
Weinstein and they're
Oh, that.
connected him to the Clinton Foundation and they're.
I don't
connected-
believe any of that. I think that's bogus. Any link between the Clintons is spurious at best.
We have a Democrat here.
Well, we have a
I'm
rational
neither
thinker
one.
here too. I mean, come on.
Well, we need
I'm
to
not
read
gonna
the
defend
Quigley
the
formula and
obvious.
find out
I
where
don't have to
Republican
defend
and
the
Democrat
obvious.
came from.
Forget it. What else?
Just want to know maybe what you both thought about this North Korea thing. It looks to be pretty serious.